Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Just waiting on a couple more people to join. Good to see some familiar names and some new names as well. I will be your host for today's webinar. My name is Kurt van der Linden. I'm also joined by my two colleagues, Frans Willem de Kloet, CEO of EcoChain here, as well as Luc Hilliger, Product Manager. The agenda for what you can expect today, we have three main points. First of all, we will start with product footprinting, why it actually matters, and the ways to do that will be given by Frans Willem. Then we will pass that to Luc Hilliger for the second point on practical examples using two of our customers, Willicroft and Dopper. Finally, Luc will give a summary introducing EcoChain Mobius on the final point. So here, Frans Willem, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks, Kurt, and hello everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar today. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay, cool. Well, welcome everybody again on the call. Yeah, my task is actually to give you a bit of a contextual part of LCA, why it matters, and ways to do it. Also to open the floor for Luc to give you a bit more detailed insight on some customer cases, and as well to show you Mobius. So let's start with I would say the beginning and our belief, and also what we see happening in the market, and that is that there is a sustainable transformation into sustainability going on, driven clearly by regulations both in the EU and outside. And in our view, and in my view, this is very similar to the digitization transformation which happened or started in 2000, which is still going on, and even also the globalization which started in the last century in the 80s. And why do we believe that there is evidence for sustainable transformation? That is, again, as mentioned already, the regulatory push. There's a lot happening in this space. I'm sure you're familiar with CSRD, which is the new reporting regulations from the EU, and applicable for very soon all companies above a certain size in Europe. There is just recently announced the Eco Design Directive, which is about responsibilities of manufacturers also after the products have left the factory floors. Then there's green claims. So basically, you cannot claim any impact on products without having evidence that this is true. There is CBAM, which is border control regulations for certain products if you produce products outside of the EU. There is regulations in the US called IRA, and so forth, and I'm sure there will be more coming. So this is a huge push already on basically all companies to transform the way they have impact on the environment. There's also a lot going on in terms of disclosure of targets. I'm sure maybe you heard already of the SBTi targets, carbon disclosure, net zero targets. So more and more companies are setting targets for themselves and are also publicly announcing this. And this, of course, also puts a push on doing something, right? One way is to set the target, but the second one is, of course, to do something about it, again, based both in company and in product impacting. There's, of course, customer demand, both in business to business, but also from consumers. There's consumer legal acts going on versus large retailers, for instance, but also Shell is a good example. And also from a B2B perspective, there's more and more supply chain engagement. Companies want to understand the scope 3 impact and therefore want to work together with the supply chain to get this information. If you don't have your act together, ultimately you run, of course, a risk as a business, both from a compliance perspective, but also from, again, green claims, data accuracy, potentially saying the wrong things. And large and smaller companies are already seeing legal acts against them for things they have said in the past or things they have put on their products. And that is becoming more and more a risk. And then there's a lot happening in standardization, greenhouse gas, EPDs, product environmental claims, PACT, PCF are all evidence that the market and businesses in general are looking for standards to communicate and also to be comparable with others. So this is all driving towards a sustainable transformation for companies. And if you then look at maturity models, and there are several out there, and we always like to use the one from Forrester. Then it's a path that you have to take, and also to understand where you are as a business. And clearly, it starts a lot with compliance, right? Do I adhere to all the rules and regulations today? Or do I need to do something there? Then a lot of companies look at, do I need to set a certain commitment? I already mentioned about targets, but do I need to set a certain commitment and have a roadmap for sustainability? And again, a lot of companies are in that space, also driven again by CSRD and regulation. But ultimately, if you're a product company, and a lot of companies out there are a product company, either because they produce products or they distribute products, you have to look at the product impact, because ultimately 95% of the total impact of the company comes from your product. So if you want to work on the sustainability impact of your company and potentially reduce it, you have to understand also what the impact is of your products. And then there are two phases basically. One is around operational excellence. So that is really for instance, not changing the product, but changing everything around the product. Maybe reduce cut loss, reduce waste, but keep the product as is. Maybe change energy mix into renewable energy. But ultimately, you will find that that is not enough, and that you also have to innovate the product itself. Use different materials, for instance, to have the same product but with a lower impact. And that's what this call today is about. As said, products determine a large part of the impact of a manufacturer or product brand. But what is also very important to understand is that a huge part of the impact of a product is ultimately determined in the design phase. No matter if it's about all the activities around the product, but most of all, it's also about how the product is created, how you can recycle the product. I think it's always a famous example is mattresses, bed mattresses. They're often made of a lot of different kinds of materials, therefore very hard to recycle. If you know that, you can change the design of the mattress so that it maybe only consists of 2 or 3 materials, and therefore the recycling can be done much better. Other example is, for instance, one of our customers, Philips, with a hairdryer. A huge part of the impact of a hairdryer is actually in the energy consumption during the use phase. If you know that, you can start to change the design of the engine of the hairdryer and therefore have a more efficient hairdryer. Very often that has a much bigger impact than, for instance, change something in the factory floor or putting solar panels on the roof. Ultimately, a large part of the company footprint is also coming, especially if you are producing your products yourself, is coming from the supply chain. One of our customers is Unilever, and if you look at Unilever, for instance, 76% of the total impact of Unilever across the whole company, so including sales offices, everything they do, 76% of the impact of Unilever comes from their supply chain. So if you know that and you want to include this into your total impact, you have to start working together with your supply chain to make this work. And that also has a huge impact on the work related to understanding the impact of products. If you want to understand the impact of a product, the way to do that is to look at the life cycle of a product. It's so-called life cycle assessment methodology, which is also an ISO standard, ISO 14040 or 14044. But ultimately, it basically looks at all the phases of a product life cycle, from raw materials going into the product, from transportation of the raw materials to the factory, processing the product into the factory, transportation it to a retail or other location, the use phase, and the end of life and recycling of the product. That whole life cycle is being looked at on a life cycle assessment methodology, and then you can look at the total impact of a product. A life cycle assessment also looks at more than only carbon. That's also maybe good to realize, and has basically 50 more additional impact categories to review, and which will show in the LCA. For instance, water usage is one, landfill, toxicity are other examples of impact categories being looked at during an LCA. And it looks again at the full life cycle. What is also important to realize is that then the outcome of an LCA methodology can be different, can vary based on industry or based on need. So maybe you've already heard of EPDs, environmental product declarations. That is an outcome of an LCA, of life cycle assessment methodology. It can also be an LCA itself, can be also a product carbon footprint when you only focus on the carbon impact, and so forth. So it's very important to understand that there is a difference between the methodology, which is a life cycle assessment, which is a worldwide accepted standard to use this, and the outcome or the report, which is a result of the work you have been doing. Now, with LCAs, which basically already exist for a long time, since the 60s of the last century, there has been business challenges, let me say. Very normal it was to create an LCA through a consultant or with a consultant. You had LCA consultants all over the world, and if you only you needed an LCA or report of a product, it was quite normal to go to a consultant. The problem with that is that it's expensive and that it's not very flexible. And now with the increasing demand of understanding what the impact of your products is, and not only look at one product, but at multiple products, this becomes very soon an expensive hobby. The other challenge is that there are already LCA software tools out there, but a lot of them are made for specialists, right? They're very detailed, very good, but very detailed tools. And therefore, you still need to have an LCA specialist in-house or work with a consultant to be able to understand the software, which basically still keeps the dependency if you work with a normal consultant. And again, when this is becoming more and more mainstream, the need for the knowledge in-house is becoming more apparent. And the need for easier to use tools is therefore important. Also, it's also important to realize that product impact insights are often a side job, right? It's maybe the marketeer or it's the product designer who has a normal job to do, and as part of their job wants to also understand what the impact is of the products. Therefore, again, you need software which is easy to understand and which is relevant, let's say, for non-experts. So our vision, again, is, and also what we focus on, is to create LCA business software for non-experts, because we believe that is becoming very key in the near future. So, in summary, more than ever, it's important to understand the product impact. Even if you're still in company reporting or you're still thinking about setting targets, it is important to understand that products, and if you deal with products, if you distribute products, if you produce products, that the product impact is essentially going to be the core thing you need to do and understand in terms of sustainable transformation. And for that, in our view, you first of all need to take ownership, right? LCAs are not longer, something you do once every 5 years. You go to a consultant, ask for a report, and that's it. But it's going to be more and more an ongoing thing, an ongoing part of your business. It is very important that you provide transparency and that it's also accurate what you do, right? So till recently, it was quite okay to say, we have, we are sustainable, we do this and this with a product. But now more and more you need to prove it. Otherwise, you run a risk as a business. And while you start working on this, it becomes more and more a continuous improvement, right? You start to work on your portfolio, you start to understand the impact of your products, and more you would like to do more and understand better how you can change the impact. And again, leverage technology for this. Access to data, actionable insights, and also business user versus specialist. All these things, make you realize that you better can leverage technology to help you in doing the job. So this is sort of, in a nutshell, I would say, the context of LCAs and why is it important for you. And Luc, my colleague, will now give you some examples on how this can be used in real life, and also how our tool looks like and how easy you can use it for yourself. Over to you, Luc.
Thank you, Frans Willem. If I could have access to sharing my screen, then I can start from my section of the presentation. Yeah, thank you very much. So here we go. All right, well, again, thank you, Frans Willem, for the introduction. I'm Luc, the product manager at EcoChain, and today I'll try to explain how lifecycle assessment and product footprinting for two of our customers were really helpful for them understanding their impact and improving their businesses. So first, a practical example that we have is that of Willicroft, a vegan plant-based cheese manufacturer. And then the other one is Dopper, and we'll dive into them right now. So here we go. So what was Willicroft? Willicroft is, again, a plant-based cheese manufacturer, and their initial challenge was that they wanted to measure the footprint of each of their products so that they could cross-compare it with the dairy products that they are providing an alternative for. So Willicroft is a relatively new player in the market, and they wanted to learn and understand which of the areas of their product are generating the highest emissions. So additionally, they also wanted to enable that both retailers and consumers could also see the positive impact that they were making when they are buying a plant-based product from Willicroft. So the challenge for Willicroft was actually to prove that their products are more environmentally friendly by benchmarking them also to dairy products. And in total, they set out to study and assess a mix of 30 ingredients for 6 of their products from very specific suppliers. So the solution that we offered, and using our software Mobius, was that it was really easy for them to make a life cycle assessment, allowing them to create footprints of all of their products up until the point of retail, and also identify which ingredients and recipes have the highest impact. I'll get to the gist of it later. So they were able to analyze alternative ingredients and with the recipes also making scenarios. And the beautiful thing of Mobius was that it allowed them to house all of their impact data in one place. So using primary and secondary data from Mobius to make their footprinting process a lot more streamlined. So they entered all of their recipes and production processes into Mobius, and not only looking into carbon, but also other impact categories such as water use and acidification were able to be assessed with greater ease. And this really helped Willicroft substantiate to what they were doing. So they were trying to actually prove that they were an impact-driven business, and allowing them to validate their assumptions with environmental data. So Willicroft actually used to base their product on cashews, and they assumed that having a plant-based product actually meant that their impact would be significantly lower. However, using Mobius, they created their initial LCA, and they found that cashews were by far the highest emitting ingredient in their product. So this was a big eye opener for Willicroft. So the impact of their cashew-based products, they did perform better than a dairy product. However, it was not yet significant enough, according to Brad, the founder of Willicroft, and they wanted to discover how they could create even less impactful products. So they shortlisted 30 ingredients with around 20 distinctive factors, including emission factors and locality in the supply chain. And they ended up selecting white beans and choosing that as their new core protein ingredient to replace the cashew nuts. What was also nice is that the white beans were also studied using life cycle assessment from a university that helped assessing the impact of the white bean. So they actually had life cycle assessment data that Willicroft could also use for their LCA. So that was a really nice collaboration between two different parties in the Netherlands. So, but the change of switching from cashews to white beans was actually a really radical decision, of course, for Willicroft, because they previously based it on cashews only. And but it resulted that their vegan Greek feta cheese, which is depicted on the right-hand side, has a 25% or 25 times smaller footprint than an actual dairy feta cheese. So that's a huge change compared to the regular dairy product. And in this example, you can see that it really helps also to create an industry benchmark so that you can compare how much you deviate from the competitors or a generic industry value. And this is a really powerful tool in communicating your product's benefits. So it also helps customers to understand how they can limit climate change basically by choosing your product over a different type of product. And also providing a background and a fact that it has a proven smaller footprint. So this enables consumers to make way more sustainable purchasing decisions in the end. So as you can tell from this quote from Brad from Willicroft, he's a firm believer that providing data to substantiate any claim is really relevant. So he's saying, until you put numbers behind your decision, everything is an assumption. And it is difficult to say that you're creating impact until you actually have the numbers. So I think Brad is really an example of a leader that understands the value of his business being credible, while most of us would assume that plant-based products are inherently better for the planet. Brad actually realized that relying solely on assumptions would not be sufficient. To truly claim itself as an impact-driven business for Willicroft, they really needed to quantify their product's emissions, using Mobius and life cycle assessment as underlying methodology. And Willicroft really effectively reduced the environmental impact of their products based on scientific data and rather than assumptions. All right, and then we are up for the next practical example of Dopper. I have a Dopper bottle right here, and they are making reusable water bottles, and it's a famous Dutch design brand in the Netherlands, and they are founded in 2002, and they aim to battle the negative environmental impact that single-use packed water bottles have. So similar to Willicroft, Dopper also had a few footprint challenges, and to a degree, Dopper was already familiar with life cycle assessment, and they conducted a light version of an LCA using Excel. So what happened, they really actually struggled with calculating new product design. So they had an initial LCA of one product, but it really took forever to change the Excels and the models that they were connecting to. And it was becoming really frustrating for the people involved in making the LCA at Dopper. So adding new environmental data, for example, from the suppliers, or making changes to the production processes were such a drag. And more importantly, Doppler set out a mission to create the most sustainable reusable water bottle in the world and prove it. So what did Mobius now bring to the table? Well, with Mobius, Niels, which is the R&D manager from Doppler, managed to really quickly transform his cumbersome data entry process in Excel to a smooth and easy process using Mobius. So it became actually a breeze to make a new cradle-to-gate LCA. It also gave them insights into their footprint on a really micro detailed level. So I actually have seen the model that Doppler created during an event at EcoChain. He was sharing it with them, and I was super surprised with how far they went into creating this multi-layered, detailed bill of material of their products. And by doing that, they were able to assess previous but also new materials that are used in the composition of their products. So using the key features of Mobius, such as creating a product scenario, but also the importing capabilities of Mobius, Doppler saved a lot of time. So by helping them to quickly replicate, adapt, and compare new product designs. So the insights and footprints results actually enable them to gain trust in their numbers and get them to the point that they were able to share them externally for reporting purposes. So as you can see here, we see a nice footprint result of Doppler, 0.14 kilograms of CO2 and some water usage data as well. I think by using Mobius, not only did Doppler gain refreshed insights into the footprint of the product, they were able to improve their previous lifecycle assessment and also, more importantly, the actual design of the product. So by starting to again look into the composition, but also the raw materials used in their original water bottle, this time Niels had the mission to design and create the water bottle with the least environmental impact technically possible. So the solution that for Doppler to actually really significantly change the impact of the product was to implement plant-based plastics. So 70% of the material causing 30% of the impact, and then also adopting recycled plastics. So they really developed a new composition with a very specific blend of carefully selected recycled and bio-based materials. And overall, this strategy to use secondary materials reduced the footprint of the water bottle massively compared to using fossil-based virgin plastics. So right now, by having accurate footprint data, it also enabled Doppler to share these values to their customers, to their colleagues, but also to investors and other interested stakeholders. So they are not afraid to claim that they produce now world's most sustainable and reusable water bottle. So as you can see here, we have Virginia which is the CEO from Doppler. And well, let me first dive into that story. So they went a little bit beyond their initial assumptions, right? That having one LCA would not be enough. Frans Willem just mentioned it, LCA shouldn't be one and done. It is going to be an ongoing part of your business if you want to really reduce the footprint of your products. You would need to use a methodology such as lifecycle assessment in order to do that. And Niels from Doppler, he realized that actively reducing emissions is a continuous act of improving your product design, but also looking into the resulting footprints. So whether it's changing physical components, raw ingredient, or suppliers, or steps in the production process. And Virginia is really championing Mobius and adopting lifecycle assessment. And as she explains via LinkedIn post, so with Mobius, we got quick insights into the environmental impacts of even the smallest design changes. And we learned that by focusing our eco-design efforts on sustainable raw materials, we could significantly reduce our product's climate footprints. So I think this actually shows that Doppler has truly mastered their product footprint by applying LCA and using it for R&D and sustainable product design. All right, I think that brings us to the next section where I'll be going to introduce EcoChain Mobius. I'm quickly going to stop sharing and then share the different tab showcasing Mobius. So as said, I will demonstrate Mobius to you now, and what you see here is the Mobius homepage. And well, on the left-hand side, we see that you in Mobius can select products. You can have life cycles, and you have an object library. So I'm going to demonstrate how virtually the Mobius account of Billy Croft could look like by replicating a Dutch vegan cheese and comparing that with Dutch cow cheese, but also making an alternative and better version of the vegan cheese. So how does it work? We have here the Dutch cow cheese, which shows you the environmental impact of 1 kilogram of Dutch cow cheese. And in this account, we made a model that is a vegan plant-based cheese. And what we see here is that we can immediately compare the impact of 1 kilogram of Dutch cow cheese compared to 1 kilogram of vegan cheese. So as you can see here, there's a list of ingredients with vinegar, cashew nuts, coconut oil, and some other ingredients. And here you see that we are using a fictional example, so it's not the Billy Croft bill of material or recipe, it's just one that we found online. But you can directly see that the impact of vegan cheese using cashew nuts is in this case significantly lower in terms of global warming potential. So the amount of kilograms of CO2 that we are seeing right here. And as you can see, the difference is roughly 80% of impact reduction. So that's already a significant reduction compared to having a kilogram of regular Dutch cow cheese. And well, as mentioned, this is an example that we use quite often to demonstrate Mobius, also to show most of the features. So this is a comparison feature allowing you to compare on the left-hand side an original product with a product that you're comparing it to. So A versus B. And you can also see the differences in environmental impact, for example, by using different visuals. And as you can see here, quite clearly that again, the vegan cheese has a significantly lower impact compared to the Dutch cow cheese. So let's get back to the homepage. Also, what's nice, if you're just getting started with Mobius, we have a lot of tools and features available for those who are not really experienced with footprinting. There's a getting started section, which allows you to make a tour, try the course. So it's the LCA beginner course, and also book a free appointment. You can also always reach out to one of our environmental specialists. And what's also nice, it's quite recently we added this feature that allows you to watch our video tutorials, but also to drag them along your screen and resize it so that you can watch the video tutorial in any way you like, in any size that you like, while being able to work in Mobius. So for example, if I click on this vegan cheese, then the video still is there. So it's a great way of showing a video which we have a lot of content available that allows you to experience Mobius, work on specific workflows or tasks, and making your first footprint basically. So let's get back to the vegan cheese and the model. So what we have here again is the example that I just showed you, the one of the vegan cheese. You could think of it as the one of Billy Croft. It's a fictional example once more, but what you can see if you click on the distribution, on the percentage notation, you immediately see that 60% of the impact of this 1 kilogram of cheese is related to cashew nuts. we have a lot of visualization features available that allow you to deep dive into the numbers and the results of your LCA. As you can see right here, we also have a table chart whereby it's easy to sort items on name or on percentages or amount of product that's being used. Again, we have some additional other charts. So for example, here we can have the bar chart that allows you to select or only display certain items that are, for example, contributing more than 10% to the impact, or 0.01, oh, that's 0.09. There we go. And we have the, of course, the beautiful donut chart. This chart is being shared quite often by our customers externally, showing where the impact is coming from, and it's a great visualization of your footprint. So again, we're going to the model, so the product inventory of the vegan cheese, and what I'm going to do right now is to make an improvement scenario by using the scenario feature of Mobius. So what we are doing is we're going here to tools, and then you also see that we have a bunch of features. For example, you can download the product footprint PDF, but right now I'm going to first make a scenario, an improvement scenario of this vegan cheese. So on the left hand side we have the original product with the highest limiting product, which is cashews. And then on the right hand side we have the scenario product. So right now if I make a change to one of these items right here, you see that the impact will change. Or for example, instead of using 0.2 liter of coconut oil, let's use 0.19. Then you directly see the changes to the footprint of your product. And what is also nice is that you can easily delete items or replace them with other ones. So I'm going to delete cashews from the inventory. There we go. Well, deleting it gives a reduction of roughly 60%. But of course, we need to replace it with an alternative or a substitute, but whatever way you prefer to call it. So let's put this first back so that it's similar to the original product. There we go. Put it back to 0.2. So what we're going to do now is find an alternative, and as you can see already, it's of course because this is a demonstration, easy to select, but you want to have a different alternative to cashews, so a protein that can also create a protein and drink from, and that replacement is, for example, almond. So in this case, we're using the same amount as compared to the cashews. We're using 0.2 kilograms of almond to replace the cashews in this vegan cheese. Here we go. And what you directly see from this example, from making the scenario, which was super easy to do, you can see that you just replaced one item for another. You substituted the cashews for almonds, and you've effectively reduced the environmental footprint with over 50% of impact. And I think that's the beauty of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make improvements to a product's design or to a recipe, or change its ingredients. You can either reduce amounts, of course, that's always a good strategy, but you can also replace items for greener alternatives. And in this case, the greener alternative of cashews is almonds. And it's quite easy in a side-by-side comparison mode, but in this case, the scenario mode helps you to really directly see and make the changes to your inventory and to your footprint of your product. So yeah, I think that's the essence of what we're trying to show and demonstrate. There's of course a lot more to Mobius. We also have a lifecycle feature, so you can make a full lifecycle of a product. But for the example, we try to keep it simple. I hope that you enjoyed this webinar.